The Arctic's most dangerous hunter can smell food from 30 miles away, but the Inuit are not afraid. Polar bears walk near their homes, waiting, watching, looking for a chance. But the Inuits see them first, reading every track in the snow. One mistake, food left out, a smell in the wind, and the hunter becomes the hunted. When the bear comes, running won't work. Fighting is not an option. Only smart moves can save them. Tune in for the night, where even the snow speaks. And when darkness falls, the real battle begins. The Inuits battle against polar bears. The Arctic isn't an empty, lifeless wasteland. It's home to thousands of Inuit, spread across remote settlements that are often right in the middle of polar bear territory. Here, running into a bear isn't a rare occurrence. It's a part of daily life. In some communities, people spot bears wandering past their homes every week, a sight as common as seeing a car drive by in a city. The difference: a polar bear doesn't just pass by and keep moving. It watches, sniffs the air, and calculates its next move. The Inuit have spent centuries perfecting the art of staying one step ahead, mastering strategies that make the difference between peaceful coexistence and becoming a bear's next meal. But one night, the snow held no tracks, only silence and a missing hunter. Tracking is an art form among the Inuit. The Arctic landscape may look like an endless, featureless white desert, but to those trained in the ways of the land, it tells a story. Snow records every movement, every shift in the wind, every change in temperature. A single paw print reveals everything: how recently a bear passed through, how heavy it is, how fast it's moving, and whether it's hunting or simply wandering. The depth of the print, the spacing between steps, and even the way the snow has settled around it all serve as clues. Straight tracks mean a bear on a mission, possibly hunting. Erratic, meandering tracks? The bear is likely just exploring, less of an immediate threat. This ability to read the snow is not just impressive, it's the difference between life and death. But knowing where a bear is only solves part of the problem. Outsmarting it is the real challenge. With a nose that can detect food from impossible distances, a bear is drawn to any scent that suggests an easy meal. Leaving food unprotected is an open invitation to disaster. The Inuit figured this out long ago and developed meticulous food storage methods. They never stored meat near their living spaces, instead creating hidden caches downwind, often on raised platforms or beneath thick layers of ice. Some villages even used multiple storage sites, ensuring that if one was raided, they wouldn't lose everything. Cooking in the Arctic presents another problem. The aroma of food travels far in the still, frozen air, turning even the most careful hunter into a target. The Inuit responded with clever solutions: isolated cooking areas far from their main camps, enclosed snow kitchens with ventilation tunnels, and even burning specific types of moss to create a smokescreen that masked the scent of fresh meat. Every meal was prepared with the understanding that a single mistake could bring an unwelcome guest. Shelters, too, had to be built with more than just warmth in mind. The igloo, often romanticized as a simple dome of snow, was in reality a fortress engineered for survival. Its curved shape made it incredibly strong, capable of supporting even the weight of a bear. The entrance was intentionally designed to be small and winding, making it nearly impossible for a bear to squeeze through. Some igloos featured multiple chambers, forcing any determined predator to navigate a frustrating maze. Even the placement of these shelters was strategic, set on high ground with a clear view in all directions, ensuring that no bear could approach unseen. But even with all these precautions, encounters still happen. And when they do, survival hinges on knowing exactly how to respond. Running? That's a mistake. No human can outrun a polar bear, which can reach speeds of over 25 miles per hour. Climbing a tree? That won't work in a land where trees don't exist. Fighting? A 1,000-pound bear with bone-crushing jaws isn't something you take on with brute force. The key is reading the bear's intentions and reacting accordingly. The Inuit have mastered the art of interpreting bear body language. A standing bear, sniffing the air, is curious but not necessarily dangerous. A bear with its head low, ears pinned back, and mouth slightly open is signaling aggression. A bear that huffs and sways side to side is on the verge of charging. Knowing these subtle differences can mean the difference between de-escalating a situation and becoming a statistic. In moments of confrontation, remaining calm is essential. Fear triggers erratic movement, and erratic movement invites attack. Inuit have learned to hold their ground, assert dominance when necessary, and retreat with calculated steps when escape is the safest option. Climate change is rewriting the rules of Arctic survival. As sea ice shrinks, more polar bears are forced to spend time on land, leading to increased interactions with humans. Areas that rarely saw bears in the past now experience frequent visits. Old survival techniques are more critical than ever, and modern conservationists are finally recognizing the value of Inuit knowledge. Scientific studies, government policies, and even polar bear safety protocols are increasingly incorporating traditional practices, acknowledging that no amount of technology can replace the understanding gained from generations of life in the Arctic. Forget security cameras. The Inuit had something way more effective: snow. That's right. They figured out how to use the sound of packed snow as an early warning system. Different areas around their homes had different crunch levels, from soft whispers to deep, unmistakable cracks. If something big and heavy stepped on the wrong patch in the dead of night, instant alarm. Even in pitch-black conditions, they knew exactly where a bear was sneaking in from. But even the best defenses could only do so much. When night fell, the real test began. The Inuits' deadly game. Meanwhile, night shifts weren't just about standing around being paranoid. They were social events, storytelling, tool-making, even an early version of reality TV where the watchers got all the action updates before anyone else. People passed knowledge down while keeping the community safe, proving that even in the harshest conditions, there's always room for a good story. Now, if a polar bear did get too close, the Inuit weren't about to start a fistfight. They had weapons specifically designed for these encounters. Enter the Nuluk, a spear so well engineered, it could have been a prototype for medieval knights. These weren't just sticks with pointy ends. They had detachable heads, designed to break off inside the bear, leaving a painful surprise behind if the beast decided to bolt. And if the bear grabbed the spear, no problem. The shaft could be detached, so the hunter didn't end up getting dragged into a wrestling match with a 1,000-pound predator. But these dogs weren't just there to make noise. If necessary, they'd fight. The lead dog, usually the smartest and most experienced, would take charge, positioning the rest of the pack to surround the bear, buying time for the humans to react. And these weren't domesticated house pets waiting for a treat. These dogs were born and raised in one of the harshest environments on Earth, trained from birth to recognize danger and respond accordingly. Booby traps weren't just for cartoons. The Inuit had their own version. Strings of hollowed-out seal bones that rattled in the wind. Bears trying to sneak in would unknowingly set off this natural alarm system. They also built narrow ice corridors leading to their homes, which forced any approaching bear to slow down. This meant hunters had the upper hand before things got dicey. Another trick involved carefully placed ice blocks to create artificial bottlenecks, funneling any bear straight into a defensive position. If a bear got past all of that, the community's escape routes were carefully planned, always ensuring that no one was ever backed into a corner. Even their settlements were designed to minimize risk. Homes were arranged in patterns that maximized visibility and left no blind spots where a bear could sneak up unnoticed. Polar bear defense didn't stop at making weapons. It extended to keeping them in top shape. The extreme cold could snap unprepared tools like twigs, so the Inuit coated spear shafts in seal oil to keep them from cracking. Metal spearheads, once they started trading for them, were wrapped in sealskin to prevent them from becoming brittle. Because in the Arctic, your weapon is only as good as your ability to keep it from turning into useless scrap. Even their bows, used for hunting smaller game, were specially crafted to withstand the brutal cold. Traditional materials like sinew and bone were carefully treated, ensuring they remained flexible when temperatures plunged. Maintenance wasn't just about preserving weapons, it was about survival. A broken tool at the wrong time could mean the difference between life and death. The Inuit knew that bears weren't random. They had predictable patterns depending on the season. Spring was peak danger time. Bears were hungry, grumpy, and fresh out of hibernation. This meant strict travel rules, never alone, always in daylight, and staying far away from known hunting areas. In summer, When melting ice pushed bears onto land, Inuit settlements shifted inland to avoid them. Fall? That's when the bears bulked up for winter, making them more aggressive. The Inuit tracked their movement like experts, marking high-risk areas with piles of rocks for future reference. And winter? Total darkness wasn't a problem. They knew how to read the ice, listening for sounds that told them where a bear was lurking. They even built snow walls to reflect the moonlight, making it easier to spot movement. Surviving the Arctic wasn't a solo mission. The Inuit designed entire villages with bear defense in mind. Houses were arranged in circles with no blind spots. Food storage was kept far from living areas, and multiple escape routes were always clear of snowdrifts. They even had a bear emergency alert system, specific drum rhythms and vocal calls that told people exactly what kind of threat was incoming. And kids? They learned all of this through games, turning survival skills into second nature before they could even tie their own boots. Traditional games involved tracking bear prints in the snow, mimicking warning calls, and racing to designated safe spots whenever an adult gave the signal. This way, by the time they were old enough to actually face danger, they already knew exactly what to do. Outsiders might see the Arctic as an unforgiving wasteland, a place where survival is a constant battle. The Inuit see it differently. To them, the ice and snow are home, and the polar bears? They're just neighbors, dangerous neighbors, sure, but predictable ones. And when you know exactly how your neighbor thinks, you don't fear them. You prepare, you adapt, and you continue to thrive, just as they have for thousands of years. They've shared this frozen world with the ultimate predator, the polar bear, not as friends, not as enemies, just two beings trying to stay alive in a place that wants them dead. The rules were simple. Respect the bear, know its ways, and don't do anything stupid. That worked, until it didn't. The rules of the Arctic had always been clear, until now. The balance had tipped, and no one knew what came next. The Arctic's new predator desperation. A few winters ago, in a quiet Nunavut village, something was wrong. The sled dogs, usually unbothered by the night, were losing their minds, howling like the end of the world was near. That kind of sound? It meant one thing. A bear was too close. Bears showing up near people wasn't new. But this one wasn't lurking at the edges, sniffing at the wind like a cautious thief. It was moving like it owned the place, big, hungry, and desperate. The kind of bear that didn't turn back. An elder had warned about this. The balance had been shifting. The bears weren't afraid anymore. The ice was thinner, the seals were harder to catch, and hunger had turned them reckless. And now, here it was. A beast that had been seen before, growing bolder each time. This time, it wasn't leaving on its own. A young hunter, barely out of his teens, stepped forward, rifle in hand, heart pounding, but steady. He knew the drill. He'd learned it from his father, who'd learned it from his grandfather. Watch for the shoulders stiffening, the jaw twitching. The moment curiosity shifts into something worse, and then he saw it. The bear's head lowered, muscles coiled. The moment before a storm hits. He should have waited, should have signaled the others. But youth comes with its own brand of confidence, the kind that gets you doomed. He took the shot. A gunshot in the Arctic doesn't just disappear. It cracks through the ice, echoes into the night. But the bullet, not deep enough. The bear roared, shaking the air itself, and then it charged. A second shot, rushed, missed completely. His boots slipped, betraying him at the worst possible moment. The bear was already there. By the time others arrived, it was over. The ground was painted red. The air smelled of iron. The bear, standing over him, turned its head slowly toward the newcomers. There was a moment, a single, frozen moment, where everything was still. Then the final shot rang out, and the bear fell. The village was safe, but nothing felt safe anymore. This wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. For generations, the Inuit had survived by knowing the land, by reading the ice, by understanding the predators that shared their world. They built homes to keep bears out, stored food where it wouldn't draw them in, learned the warning signs before danger became tragedy. But the world was shifting under their feet. The old ways were no longer enough. Across the Arctic, it was happening again and again. In Wales, Alaska, a mother and her child were walking between buildings when a bear struck. No warning, no time. A hungry bear had wandered into the village, and that was that. It was doomed. But it didn't matter. The damage had been done. In Arviat, a man named Aaron Gibbons became a hero in the worst way. Out on Sentry Island with his kids, he saw the bear before they did. He told them to run. They obeyed. He stood his ground. No weapon, no chance. By the time help arrived, he was gone. The bear was dead, but so was he. The kind of loss that never really leaves a place. This wasn't how it used to be. The elders remembered when bears hesitated, when they kept their distance. Now they were coming straight in. No fear, just hunger. Climate change was wrecking everything. The ice, once thick and steady, was breaking apart. The seals were harder to hunt. The bears were spending more time on land, looking for food in places they never needed to before. And when an animal that big, that powerful, gets desperate, bad things happen. The Inuit adapted because adaptation was the only option. They formed patrols, set up deterrents, kept weapons close, not because they wanted to be doomed, but because they had to be ready. Lights were used to keep the darkness from hiding threats. Every night, someone watched. Every night, they stayed prepared. But they knew weapons weren't a real solution. You couldn't just shoot every bear that wandered too close. The bears weren't the enemy. They were survivors too, trying to figure out this new, messed up reality. Eliminating them all wouldn't fix the problem. So the Inuit turned to knowledge. They taught the next generation how to read the ice, how to see the warnings, and how to survive. They worked with researchers to track the bears, to find solutions that didn't involve bloodshed. They adapted, because that's what they'd always done. But the losses still weighed heavily. Names were remembered, stories were told, not just as warnings, but as reminders. The Arctic was changing, the balance was gone, and survival had never been easy. The bears weren't going anywhere, and neither were the Inuit. The shift was undeniable. More bears were wandering into villages, not just in search of food, but out of sheer necessity. What used to be rare encounters were now becoming almost routine, and that was the problem. The understanding that had once existed, an unspoken agreement between bear and hunter, was breaking down. The rules that had been passed down for centuries no longer applied the way they once did. Entire communities had to rethink the way they lived, where food was stored, how children played outside, who kept watch at night. New strategies were developed, but even those were temporary fixes to a much bigger problem. Experts talked about conservation efforts, about relocating bears, about finding ways to restore their food sources. But the Inuit weren't dealing with theory, they were dealing with reality, a reality where a bear could show up at any moment, a reality where one wrong step could mean the difference between life and death. The balance that had lasted for so long had tipped, and no one knew if it could ever be set right again. The balance is broken. The rules have changed. Can the Inuit and polar bears continue their deadly dance? Or is this the beginning of an unstoppable war for survival? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.